I mean, the number one threat to marriages is the pause button.
Some of the other things that we experience as entrepreneurs, right? Like there's not just the business side. There's not just the business piece of this, right? Like everything else is affected, whether it's kids, whether it's your wife or your husband.
The spouses would often say, I feel like their business is their mistress.
Ever wonder how the e-commerce brands you admire do it? How they just know the right message to send to the right people at the right time? Guess what? It's not experience. They have the right data and the right tools. They have Klaviyo. Klaviyo's data-driven marketing automation platform is sophisticated enough to power those legendary campaigns from the brands you admire. But they made it simple, easy, and fast enough for anyone to use. Klaviyo helps brands easily create personalized, multi-channel marketing campaigns using the most powerful asset, your customers' data. Klaviyo integrates with all leading e-commerce platforms, helping you use your customer data in real time to send more relevant email and SMS automations. Plus, building a marketing campaign is drag and drop easy. You can get started with your first campaign in under an hour and easily build from there with Klaviyo's best performing templates. Klaviyo gives you all the power of an enterprise marketing automation platform and none of the complexity, so you can compete with the big guys. No wonder more than 65,000 brands can't get enough. To get started with your free trial of Klaviyo, visit klaviyo.com/uncensored. That's KLAVIYO.com/uncensored.
You're listening to E-Commerce Uncensored with Kevin Manel and Jason Caruso.
Hey everyone, and thank you for joining us on another episode of E-Commerce Uncensored. My name is Kevin Manel, and I'm here with
Jason Caruso.
Today we are joined with Lee Baucom, Ph.D. And he's going to talk with us today about marriage and entrepreneurship. And that's kind of been, we have kind of had a theme, a relationship theme over the last few weeks. We're getting pretty deep, Jason, in this podcast.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really like a therapy kind of guy, but I can definitely, as we talk to him, I can definitely see a place for hearing alternative advice.
Yeah, because entrepreneurs are just so stuck in their bubble. I mean, all men, really, I think. Women, whatever, you can get stuck in their bubble and like not see an outside perspective. And I think it's important. And I think he has some really good points. So here's our interview with Lee Baucom. Hey, Lee, how you doing today? Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, Kevin, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be with both of you. Your podcast is excellent podcast. I always listen to the episodes, and I think the last two are kind of leaning into this one. So let's jump into this.
Perfectly. Yeah, thanks so much.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Thanks for being here. We, we've always talked about execution on this podcast, about how to execute, email or open, like subject lines or Facebook ads or whatever. And, as of, I guess, the last couple of podcasts, we have been trying to kind of, I don't want to say shift gears, but we're trying to talk about like some of the other things that we experience as entrepreneurs, right? Like there's not just the business side. There's not just, the business piece of this, right? Like everything else is affected, whether it's kids, whether it's your wife or your husband or whatever. So I think that this episode with you is kind of just another extension of those recent podcasts about, juggling a marriage and a business.
Yeah, in fact, I think that one of the challenges for entrepreneurs is what leads a lot of people into being an entrepreneur is about this freedom thing, right? They want to have some freedom in life and freedom of money, freedom of time too. And sometimes that ends up being something that we then give away. And then the cost is to our primary relationships, and then this one in marriage.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking. It's funny because we were talking about this on I don't know if it was the last one, the podcast before. Like we were talking about how your business will take up Ezra Firestone, who we had on this podcast, who I think everybody knows. Basically said like, look, your business will take as much time of yours as you'll give it.
Mhm.
And it's just something that's always stuck with me since he said that. And it's so interesting. It's like your business will never say no. Like you go like,
Which has lots of implications with marriage, right?
right, exactly. It'll never say like, hey, get off the computer and go hang out with your family, you know?
Yeah.
So, and it's definitely something I struggle with because personally, you know, I feel like my part in this is so much more important than like I feel like us eating and having a roof over our shoulders is the most important thing. But you know, taking care of the kids is my wife's most important thing, right? And like juggling those two things, I think is a real challenge.
Yeah, it's interesting. The way you frame that is kind of like a divide and conquer kind of thing. Like you've got your thing, I've got my thing, and sometimes what happens with that division is, especially with entrepreneurs, is that division gets to be bigger and bigger and more separate because the divide and conquer means you keep spreading apart. You're going further afield. Like if you're going to use the conquer thing, you know, where you're conquering next keeps being further and further away from oftentimes family and certainly the marriage.
Yeah, I think for sure it's like I think the entrepreneur, and I didn't actually, when I graduated college, I didn't think I was necessarily an entrepreneur. Like I thought I was just going to go into the workforce. I was going to work for this as a freelancer for this company, and it just kind of evolved. And I started to grow that entrepreneurial attitude, which is a
You're
mindset.
still learning from me. You're still learning
Yeah,
from me.
right. Thanks, Jason. Again,
You're
thank you
welcome.
so
You're
much for
welcome.
everything you've done for me, Jason.
You're
Thanks
welcome.
for reminding me.
Sitting at the knee of the master, right?
Just making sure.
I dragged you out of the gutter, Jason. Now just sit back and listen.
All right. All right.
So it's like that entrepreneurial mindset is so like it kills you sometimes, and it kills me, and I know it kills Jason, because just like those thoughts about business and about doing the next thing are always there when like your family's like sitting there like, hey, I'm over here too, like, or my wife like, hey, Jason used to kill me for it too, when I used to like be stuck in front of a computer when we had to go to the office, and I would just like lock in on the computer from 9:30 in the morning to like 6:30, 7 o'clock at night. And I'd just be staring. And my wife would call me in the middle of the day, and I'd be like, yeah. And she'd be like, you're not listening to anything I'm saying, are you? She's like, yeah, of course I am. And then of course I would not retain anything she ever said. And I fell into that trap of like, and at least I recognize that I have that problem, but it's still, even though you recognize it, it's still such a hard thing to get away from.
So one of the things that I've heard over and over, and I've worked with, just background wise, for 30 years, I've been working with couples, and during that time, I didn't think of myself as an entrepreneur. It took a while for me to realize that even having, you know, like a doctor can be very entrepreneurial in their practice. For me, a therapist can be very entrepreneurial in their practice. And so that led me to do a lot of things like consulting with family businesses and closely held companies that would have me come in not to deal with the business, but to deal with the family and the family business. And that often included the founder and that marriage, the founder's marriage. And I began to see these repeated patterns and repeated phrasings where the spouses would often say, I feel like their business is their mistress.
Yeah.
And that began
mistress or our actual wife.
Yeah.
My wife is my mistress. It seems.
But if you notice, most people with a mistress treat their mistress a little better than they do their wife. So
yeah, I guess
let's just be clear about that.
Yeah.
So if the screen is in front of you, Kevin, for you, if the screen's in front of you and you're hearing from your wife, who's getting the primary attention? It's that screen, right? And so as Ezra Firestone said, you know, never says no. The screen's always there. It's always waiting for you and is always kind of giving you that dopamine hit, that, you know, get a little excited by the business stuff or get a little scared by the business stuff. And either one, it's going to captivate your attention.
Yeah. And the other thing is, like, I think that we are taught as entrepreneurs that you have to quote unquote hustle, right? Like you got the Gary Vaynerchuks out there, who I don't have anything personally against Gary, and I know a lot of people love him. But as I've matured in my business sense and my business, I feel like I've gotten into business for what you said is like to have the freedom. And then like now that I'm in it, I don't take advantage of the freedom, so to speak. Right. And so I don't quite think hustling 24 hours a day, 7 days a week is healthy. I don't think it's healthy for your family. I don't think it's healthy for you personally. So I don't really subscribe to that. I used to, but I think like now as I've matured in this whole thing, like I realized that jumping on my computer on Sunday afternoon to make myself feel better about my entrepreneurialism or whatever, it doesn't really make that big of a deal in my business. Like jumping on Sunday and like answering emails, it's not going to bring me more money or bring me more stability, or I'm not going to do anything with that other than take away from my family.
But you still get the hit, right? I mean, you get the dopamine hit, and especially in a lot of times when a marriage has become more difficult, because if you've got two paths, one is to go, I'm going to deal with this relationship issue, and the other is I'm going to go do what I always know makes me feel better dealing with my business. You kind of naturally follow the path of least resistance, and that often leaves the relationship, because relationships have some pieces in there that require maintenance and conflict, that you have to be able to move forward. It was kind of interesting, your episode on partnership, it kind of laid out some of the pieces about marriage. And one of the things that you two talked about is the role of conflict, and that comes up in a business partnership, and it comes up in marriage. I think one of the things I would add as a model for that is that conflict is fine. It's just that conflict needs to be in service of whatever relationship, the business partnership or the marriage. And sometimes people lose the fact that that's the nature of or should be the nature of conflict in partnerships, whether they're marriage or business.
I think the problem, like I think we mentioned it too on our last podcast, is that when Jason and I have those conflicts, and maybe it was off recording, I don't remember, but when we have those conflicts, it's like when we get off the phone, like 10 minutes later, he's calling me up, be like, "Yeah, let's talk about this next thing." When you fight with your wife, it's like it's still there the next day, and it's still there the next day.
It never goes away
until you address it again.
What do you think the difference is between you two having a conflict or heated discussion, whatever it is, and one with your spouse?
Yeah, I don't really know. I can't answer that question. I
think I can. I think like I am not, Kevin and I are working on the same thing. And I don't think my wife necessarily understands what I go through on a day-to-day basis. So Kevin does. So Kevin knows that we're on phone calls all day, that we're dealing with clients all day, that we're dealing with our personal businesses all day. He knows what I'm going through, where I don't necessarily think my wife quite understands what Kevin and I have to do for her to keep Amazon in business.
Okay, so can we
take that unravel there?
There's one step back, right? Here's the step back. When you two are having a discussion in business, there is a clear goal, right? And when I worked with family businesses, this is one of the things I started talking about, is the fact that a family business is a hybrid of two different systems, the family system and the business system. And the number one goal of a business is profit. Number one goal of a family is relationships and love. What's easier to define though, profit or relationship and fun? So if you're having a discussion, a difficult time, you probably are both trying to get to the same endpoint. You may have a different view of how to get there, but you're very clear. There's a very defined piece you're going after. You have the kind of the welfare of the business at hand, right? So that makes it that conflict. But let's take that into your marriage. If you take one step back, you both are trying to get to, it's the same thing. You're partners in life. You're trying to get through life. And so whatever conflict you have a common goal. You probably, as is true with many couples, they've lost track of the fact that they both have a common goal of let's get through life and let's, be in relationship and loving. So while it's not as clearly defined as it may be when you two are talking, you take one step back and it's exactly the same. But that's one of the traps that we often fall into. We forget that.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I think that is 100% accurate. Like, I do think that, like, we are trying to raise our kids the best that we can. We're trying to offer them the best life that we can. Um, I look at it more as a disciplinary thing. She looks at it more like buying the kids things that'll make them happy. But the idea is that we are trying to do the same thing. But, and I do think that, you know, the difference is, and I don't, this is not with everybody, but I know, like, with Kevin and I, it's emotional, but it's not emotional, right? Like, we are emotionally charged, but our conflict isn't emotional. So we're not like, you know, it's not like lingering around. It just kind of goes away, because it's just like, whatever. Like, you know what I mean?
On to the next thing.
On to the next thing.
problem.
Yeah. And I think one thing, like, I find is, like, we'll, if we really get, like, annoyed at each other, like, the next day it's like it doesn't even come up anymore.
He'll give me the silent treatment for like the rest of the day, or something like that, or he'll send me like a snarky text.
Because you're annoying. What can I say? You're like an annoying person.
It's about marriage. This isn't about partnership right now.
Right.
But it's interesting how many skills are the same.
It is, it is. I think, and I think there's also some animosity between giving the business time and not giving the wife time. Right. Mm-hmm. Like, it's like you give this business all of your tender love and care, but you don't necessarily, like, I mean, let me speak for Kevin, right? Like, back in the day, I would call him up at 10 o'clock at night, and he'd be with his wife watching TV with his laptop, right? Like, oh, I'm just working on this one thing on the website. My wife has a show on, and I'm having a drink, and he's not really hanging out with her.
No, it's still similar. I don't like necessarily sit with my laptop, but we still sit there and, stare at our phones. Like, after the kids go to bed, we're like, okay, fine, let's get a drink. And then we just sit there with our heads down on our phones. I'm like, what the fuck are we doing? And I'm like checking my email. Like you said, you're getting that hit, right? Even like the negative stuff. Like, I'm waiting for that client to be some kind of asshole or something at some point that I get that. I don't know what it is. I'm like searching for that negative and positive reaction from anybody than my email. And
which, by the way, both of those are dopamine hits,
right?
Positive or negative.
And like Jason said earlier, it's like that 15 minutes I'm looking at checking my email. Like, is it really worth the time while my wife's looking at Amazon and things like that? But like, when you think about it, like, you talk about like long-term goals and like where you both want to be at the end of life, or whatever you want to call it. It's like, and it freaks me out sometimes because I think about it a lot. And it's like, when the time comes, the kids are gone, the business is gone, probably not gone, but maybe moved on to another phase where you're not involved, you're retired, and then you're back to just the two of you again.
Mm-hmm.
And that, that's a scary thing to me, because you put so much time. We're not even talking about kids right now. You're putting so much time into your kids, you're putting so much time into your business, and then they're gone, and you're like, oh shit, okay, what do we do now? And that's a scary thought.
So I talk about the pause button marriage, which is what you're describing. I mean, at some point, and you get married. I mean, why do you get married? Because you love with this person. You want to spend your life with them. You get married, and right after that, you hit the pause button for lots of reasons. You have kids. Okay, we'll get back to each other when the kids are, and it's always an extension, or when the business gets to a certain level. So you could say, yeah, we'll get back to it when the kids are finally a little self-sufficient, or out of diapers, or in school, or out of school, or graduated from college, or married. I mean, it always is a little bit further down the line in the business. Once we get to a sustainable level, then we'll get back to each other. And once we have this much, it's always something just out there. And the idea is that lots of people believe is you can hit the pause button, get to wherever you need to, unpause it, and go right back to the relationship. But those moments that you're talking about, where you're sitting in front of the TV and you both are on your devices, they are kind of the living proof that pause doesn't really work. That what happens in the pause, I mean, any relationship is either growing or receding. There's no pause to it. If you've got a friend somewhere that you're not in constant communication with, it's on a decline. You might be able to get back together and it's like old times, but there's so much that is lost in that you just can't pause a relationship. And so what you're actually doing is leading to disconnection. And for me, I mean, the number one threat to marriages is the pause button. We think we'll get back to it. And then we unpause it and we're like, who are you? Who have we become in this? Who are you? What's important to us? Which is why we are now seeing a lot of people getting to kind of the right before retirement, or even there are several different kind of points of higher divorce. One is when the kids leave the house. That's a big one, because now it's empty nest and you're facing them again. The next one is retirement or a big change in life. One of you decides you want to relocate. Those are just stress points, because you suddenly are going, oh, wait, it's us again. And you may realize that the us began to evaporate somewhere right after pause.
So how do you prevent hitting that pause button when you have so many things going on? Like, I don't see, it's almost like I don't see any other option, but hitting, I wouldn't say that me and my wife necessarily hit the pause button at some points we have, but how do you avoid doing that?
So part of connection happens on a daily basis. I mean, updating each other on what's going on in life. I mean, as much as you think your spouses may be fairly disinterested in a deep dive in your business, knowing what your day's been like can be a connecting moment. But I mean, part of this is also a sense of empathy, which it's interesting. People often tell me, well, I'm not an empathetic person. I hear this a lot from business people. I'm not a particularly empathetic person. The fact is, empathy is a skill set that you can learn. And it's also an active piece of saying, I'm going to figure out what's important to my spouse, because it's easy to make assumptions. All they want to do is, spend the money or whatever it is. And that is a place we can kind of reclaim and say, you know what, I want to sit down and say, hey, what was your day about? I mean, you don't want to know all the nitty gritty of every instance, but having a higher viewpoint is a connecting thing. Making sure that you're taking time together is another big one. Making sure that it's not all about being with the kids or centered around the kids, but taking time for each other. Finding some places that you might have some common interest. I think a big one is actually just making sure that you have some vision of where you two both want to go in front of you. Mm-hmm. I mean, we do this in business all the time, right? We have vision statements and core value statements and all this, and then we forget to do that with the marriage and say, where do we want things to go? How do we want to move it along?
So let me ask you a question, because I think about this a lot, and I don't mean to make this a strictly husband and wife thing, because I think that times are changing, and I do think that there are more women coming into entrepreneurship, which is great. But how much of this conflict between entrepreneurship and your marriage, and how much of this is just that men are from Mars, or women are from Mars, men are from whatever the damn book is. Yeah. But how much of it is that we're just different creatures? Because I don't feel like my wife has a financial burden or a burden to support our kids financially, but her burden is to support them emotionally and that side of things. So how much is this conflict that we're just built differently?
Yeah. So I try to use the term spouse, because I don't think it needs to be
one way or the other. Right?
Yeah.
Not gender. Right.
Right. And so here's some observation. It's not true across the board, but it tends to be more often that in the entrepreneurial world, men have a harder time balancing their marriage and their family than women do. And I think part of that is just still some societal norms and other things. That's not true across the board. There are women who are as married to their job as any man, and so that, we're watching kind of a transformation. But I do think that they're, just because of kind of the competitive nature. I mean, if we just look at it, men are still kind of raised to be more competitive. That's still changing, but still tends to be. And so a lot of men get into entrepreneurship and hit that competitive, they take their competitiveness and they're like, I'm going to win it. And women tend to be much more about the relationships and about the whole. And so they might have more coalitions that they work on in their marriage. And so they already have a different mindset going in. Again, that is broad strokes. What we know, and this is an interesting kind of thing, it's hard to figure out who is more likely to get divorced, but from what research there is, entrepreneurs are somewhere between 8 and 10 times, or 8 and 10% more likely to divorce than the general population. So that tells us that there's something that's embedded in that. Now, the difficulty with that is saying, what is an entrepreneur, right? I mean, that there's a loose category there, but if we use what data we have, 8 to 10% higher than the general population. So that puts it north of 50%.
So I'm going to say something here that may, I don't, this is actually something that I observed, and I think maybe this may have a little bit to do with it. And I don't know. This is like a hunch. Like, I think women, generally speaking, are just better at focusing and compartmentalizing their lives. Like, I just for whatever reason, like, I feel like men are just like 150% balls in on one thing, and then like everything else you got to leave them alone about. But like, women tend to be like, I mean, I can even see it with like people who we like work for us, right? Like, women are just, they're just so much better at like, they're on top of things. They seem like they just focus and concentrate more on the thing they're doing right now. Whereas I feel like I'm all over the place, and like I'm not as focused, I would say. And I don't know how much of that is just my own thing, but I just feel like that's what I've experienced, is like, like they always say, like men can't
Multitask.
and where women can. And I'll be honest with you, like I do feel like there is some truth to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So most people think that men are better at compartmentalizing than women, for sure. So part of what that leads to is that there are often times that men can say, oh, you know what, I'm going to leave this mess over here because I would rather be in this mess over here. And so if there's a difficulty here, dealing with kids, dealing with the spouse, I'm just going to go over here to my job and pull into that and act like that's not going on. And so women do a better job generally of balancing the relationships that, wherever that comes from, whether it's Venus or socialization or whatever it is, being able to balance those relationships. And also the fact is, if you look at how in the household jobs are divided up, women who are entrepreneurial still carry a large load of the household duties, and men who are entrepreneurial tend to carry far less. If you look at just
we come home and we lay on the couch.
Yeah, I've done my shift. The rest of it is up to you.
Now, I know I'm talking a lot here, but as we're talking about this, we kind of rushed into this conversation, but you've actually wrote the book on these things, right? quote unquote the book. I mean, how many books do you have out on this stuff?
Yeah, so I've got 7 books total, but 4 of them on relationships, and then a couple of online programs, because what I also realize is we have lots of ways we need to take in information and learn. But yeah, I mean, I've been doing the work for 30 years and realized early on that the way we were trying to fix relationships wasn't particularly effective. So I've been trying to do kind of a step back and going, okay, what can we do as individuals to change some things?
Got some, Kev?
Yeah, I have a question because we're going back to the marriage topic. The thing I struggle with sometimes, and the fact that I'm like, hustling all the time and I'm working and I'm trying to spend as much time with the kids is like whenever I actually wrote it down here because I wanted to remember to talk to you about it, is like I call it like the free time guilt that I have for myself. Like my wife, when I started, when we had kids, my wife stayed home and she stayed with the kids. She spent the entire day with the kids. She took care of the house. She did everything to make sure the house was perfect. And then I would go to work. And then, I'd get the opportunity to go play golf. Jason will say, if I ask Jason, he'll say, I'm not allowed to. Like if I say I can't go, Kevin's probably not allowed to.
You're not.
But in actuality, it's more of like, I feel like I need to stay home because I haven't been there, or I shouldn't. She's been with the kids all week and I should be home with them to give her some relief. So I end up not going. And I just have that in the back of my head and it's just constantly there.
Does she feel guilty does she feel like she has to jump on the computer and start doing work with your clients? Because like, that's how I look at it. I'm like, when she wants to go do something, she just does it. I just say, go do it. I'll watch the kids. I don't like, you look at it the other way. Like, I don't really care. I mean, I'm not like, when I got married, we didn't like do the handcuffs. We did a ring. Right. So, you're not in jail when you get married. So I feel like you should do things that you love to do. My wife, I tell her all the time, go do things, go like decompress, go find something that you enjoy doing. And because I want to go do things that I enjoy doing. So, that's just the way I do it, is like, if I want to play golf on Saturday, I'll like tell my wife, hey, like I'll watch the kids and you can go do something with one of your friends or something. I mean, I don't know. I feel like it's kind of like a quick fix, easy fix.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably a healthy thing for everybody to have their own things that they love to do outside of the house without their partner, without their family and stuff like that. Just like I can't help it. Like I can't like help looking at my phone when I don't need to look at my phone. It's like kind of like that kind of thing.
Yeah. So what I've watched, and Jason, what you started down was we negotiate. That's basically what you're doing. If she needs to go somewhere, there's the extreme. So Kevin, your thing is wherever you are, you probably feel a little bit of guilt. If I'm at work too long, then I feel guilty. I'm not giving it, the home stuff. If I'm at home, then I feel guilty about at work. And then if I'm going and doing something, then I feel guilty all around. Mm-hmm. And so that part of that is, built into I'm going to feel guilt wherever I am, which basically means you're never where you are. Right. Your head is partly somewhere else.
Yeah. When I'm playing, even when I do end up going play golf, like I have a hard time like enjoying myself. I mean, after I have a couple of beers, I'll be all right. But
I don't quite enjoy being with you either when you're playing golf, because you're like not there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which means that nobody's getting the best of you anywhere.
Right.
And so part of that is dealing with that internal struggle of, wherever I am, if I'm at work, can I really just be at work and not feel guilty about that? When I'm at home, can I just be at home and be present with my spouse, my kids, all of that? When I'm out having a good time, can I just be doing that? But what's required of that is what Jason, you talked about, is making sure it's a negotiated understanding. And because a lot of marriages get messed up by expectations, hidden or open expectations. I expect you to do this, or you think someone expects you to do this, rather than agreement. And so an agreement, Jason, is, hey, is it okay if and that's not really asking permission as much as, can we agree to how this works out? I go play golf on Saturday. Would that be okay? If you want to go somewhere, I'm happy to watch the kids. There's an agreement that's built into that. And if you're doing that piece, then, and you're still feeling guilty, Kevin, that's probably outside of the relationship piece more than just your motivation ends up being about guilt. The danger is that when we justify that I did my shift at work, everything else is your problem, and we don't take into account that there might be some need to balance that. That's the danger point.
Ever wonder how the e-commerce brands you admire do it? How they just know the right message to send to the right people at the right time? Guess what? It's not experience. They have the right data and the right tools. They have Klaviyo. Klaviyo's data-driven marketing automation platform is sophisticated enough to power those legendary campaigns from the brands you admire, but they made it simple, easy, and fast enough for anyone to use. Klaviyo helps brands easily create personalized, multi-channel marketing campaigns using the most powerful asset, your customers' data. Klaviyo integrates with all leading e-commerce platforms, helping you use your customer data in real time to send more relevant email and SMS automations. Plus, building a marketing campaign is drag and drop easy. You can get started with your first campaign in under an hour and easily build from there with Klaviyo's best performing templates. Klaviyo gives you all the power of an enterprise marketing automation platform and none of the complexity, so you can compete with the big guys. No wonder more than 65,000 brands can't get enough. To get started with your free trial of Klaviyo, visit klaviyo.com/uncensored. That's KLAVIYO.com/uncensored.
Well, I think what Kevin failed to do is have a contract like I do. I have a golf contract.
Yeah, it wasn't a negotiation at all. It was just like, Jessica, I'm playing golf on Saturday.
No,
and
that's not what
it.
I said. This is what I said. Lee, you are Dr. Lee. You are the expert in this. Okay. When you go into a business agreement, you have a contract, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when my wife and I we met, we were talking about getting married and stuff. I said, look, here's the deal. Every Saturday I play golf. Every October I go to Myrtle Beach to play golf. The other 6 days and 11 months, I'll do whatever you want me to do. But if you have a problem with me playing golf on Saturdays and going to Myrtle Beach in October, I'm not your man. And this is, I joke about this.
Sounds healthy, Lee, doesn't it?
No, I joke about this.
Clear.
It's clear. Like, that's the thing. So I went on 2 or 3 golf trips this year. And you know what she said to me? She goes, we got to go back to the original contract.
It's not even October yet.
No,
You're breaking your contract.
Yeah, I just got back from Hilton Head,
Uh-huh.
and then I'm going. My dad's coming down, and Kevin's coming down to play in the golf, to play golf, and then I'm going to Arizona to play golf again. So she's like, we got to get next year. We're going back to our original contract, October, and Saturdays. But the point is like, I make a joke about it, but I will tell you, we've never fought about me playing golf on Saturday or going to Myrtle Beach in October. In fact, my son was born on September 8th, 2013. On October 13th, 2013, I was in Myrtle Beach. I had the trip. I paid for the trip. I really couldn't cancel it. But the point of the matter is, that was clear in the beginning, before we were married, before we committed, before we did any of this. That's what I do. It's what I like to do. I enjoy doing it. She's welcome to do whatever she wants to do. I will never tell her she can't do something. She does whatever she wants. But those are my stipulations.
And the fact that you started that from the outset, and most couples don't do that, right? And so sometimes those are lurking back there, those expectations, or they suddenly emerge and you hear somebody announce, this is what's going to happen. And that's a tough one. But
Right.
You're very clear. This is who I am. This is what I love. That is in many ways an agreement, right? Because she could have said, no, I don't agree to that. And you would have had that at the outset. So that actually, you can abuse that if you choose to, but you basically set a clear expectation. This is where I'm going to be. This is what I'm going to be doing. You've got to decide if that's okay.
Yeah. Doesn't that like on the surface just seem like, okay, golf is more important than my relationship with you?
Well, except for the point was for 11 months and 6 days a week and 11 months out of the year. No.
Right.
I'm carving out this. And I really do think that, my wife, I hear lots of people say, you should have to do everything with your spouse. If you don't love doing everything with your spouse, something's wrong. My wife is not a water person. I am. So she's fine with me going paddleboarding and scuba diving and whatever else, but she's not going to be with me because that is not her thing. And I'm not going to, expect her to be. She has her things that I am not interested in. And the question is how we negotiate that. Not whether we have different interests. And it's not about making something more important as much as saying that there are important things in life. The same thing could be said with, well, aren't you making business more important than the marriage? And most people would say, well, business is what fuels our lifestyle. So we found a balance.
Yeah. And I think that, I agree with you, Lee, because I'm the same way. Like I am not, I don't have to be attached at the hip at all times with my spouse. It didn't matter what relationship I was in. It's just not how I feel like it's healthy to have outside things that you can come back and talk about. Like, hey, I went to the golf course today. I played badly. The weather was too, like, I feel like that could be healthy rather than like experiencing everything together and having nothing to talk about. I just don't agree with it. I know some of the old people, like I say older people, but I mean like, so Kevin's in-laws are like the old Italian people. Like they're like these they're Russians, and they're very much family orientated, and they're very much like they do everything together. And likewise, my Italian family is the same way. I just happen not to be that way. I don't like to be with someone 24/7. I don't care who it is. I want to do things. I like to do things on my own. I like to have other experiences.
So the research shows that the most successful marriages have a combination of where you have the energy between you, and you're also both bringing outside energy. The ones that struggle are kind of what are called super glue marriages. Matching shirts. We eat everything just alike. We do everything just alike. We, everything is just the same because there's no energy coming in. Or on the other end, they have nothing together. So they only have their external energy, nothing shared between them. Those are the two danger points. So having something where, and then it's figuring out what equation that fits for both of you, but having a place where you have connection together, plus you're bringing in some outside interest and energy from it. Even if you don't talk about it, the fact that you come back jazzed up or calmed down from, a day on the golf course feeds into the relationship in many ways.
Well, also, I think from a mental health standpoint, like I've been like going through this mortgage for the past 60 days. There's been ups and downs, and like I've been really stressed out. I have been very distracted, and I haven't been able to concentrate on things. I've been like to a point where I've had constant headaches, and my stomach is constantly just hurting me for no reason, just because I'm just stressed out. And I went away to Hilton Head this past weekend, and I normally check my emails. I normally interact on Slack. I normally do those things. I just needed a break, and I needed to just get away from it. And I didn't do any of that. And I'll tell you, man, like I came back and I feel so much better. I feel so much more energized and revitalized. And I do feel like a sense of like, relief. And I think sometimes like from like Kevin, he's he very much wants to make sure everybody is happy. He wants them. I don't want to call him a people pleaser, because that's not how I would describe it. But he wants to make sure his wife's happy. He wants to make sure his kids are happy. He wants to make sure our business, like, and I think that sometimes he suffers for that instead of like,
right. He has the reverse effect of actually what I'm going for. It actually hurts the relationship instead of hurts the business. It hurts the relationship. Both things suffer from it.
You need a break. You need just a break from everything, and you need to just go do things that you truly enjoy doing. And I'm not happier anywhere else than on the golf course. I mean, look, does that sound bad? Yeah, like I love my kids and I want to be with my kids, but I do love playing golf. It's like it's a passion of mine. So it helps for sure.
Are you finished with that, Lee? Did you have something to add?
No, go ahead.
I just had a question about like what you felt like is it important, and how much do you think your spouse should be involved in the business? Not like the depths of it, but like, so when I get done with my day and I've been through the ringer, I've been on the phone for God knows how long with this client, that client, or whatever it may be, or partners or whatever, I just want to like not talk about it. So like when the question comes up, how was your day? It's just like, yeah, it was fine. And she knows it's bullshit. She knows, I mean, especially now, because I'm home in my office, she can pretty much hear what I'm saying for sometimes. How important is that to like divulge, like, yeah, I had this like pain in the ass thing go down, or Jason was an asshole today again, things like that. Like, how important is that?
You would just say that over and over.
just daily report, right?
That's just a constant. She knows that. I don't have to say it.
So I think the bigger thing to that is it depends on, so your business does affect your life, your family life, your resources, right? And so I think sometimes what ends up happening is entrepreneurs see the storm coming, and they either don't want to talk about it because they've had enough of it, or they don't want to worry a spouse. And in the process, they cut off the teamwork. We're in this together. And so one of the things I've often had is somebody coming in when a business hits a skid, and the spouse is like, I had no idea that we were headed for this, because the spouse was either not wanting to talk about it or avoiding, the scare. So I think there is a basic level, at least a basic level of going, let me just kind of let you know where we are, good or bad. So they have some idea of that. The rest of that depends on the combination of you and your spouse. The danger is I see some business relationships where it ends up the spouse is kind of like they want to be the business consultant without being the consultant. So they always have advice for how you should do things, and an expectation you're going to listen to them. And that's where I think that there has to be some agreement on the separation, that's not a spousal thing.
Yeah, I think it's funny you say it, because that's what I was going through my head. I'm like, honestly, it's like sometimes like I think she knows me so well that like if I told her certain things, I would get the advice that I don't want to hear, I guess. And that's why it's kind of maybe left off.
Well, the other side of it is like, it's not fair to your business partner, because your business partner isn't in business with her, right? Your business partner is in business with you, right? So like my buddy used to say this all the time. He's like, I'm not in business with my business partner's wife. So he's like, he had to tell his business partner, like, look, I like your wife, I love your wife, but that's not my partner. So I don't want her opinions. I don't want her, I don't want her to tell or influence you on doing things, because this is our business, right? Like, and I know that's probably kind of cold, but I do think there is some validity to that, because my decisions in this business, like, even if my wife does give me her opinion, like, Kevin's my partner in this business. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think so for me, I don't have a partner and much about, I have, some pieces of that, but for the most part, I don't have a partner. And so sometimes I will say, hey, just wondering what you think about this. What I know from my wife is that she is going to be 100% supportive of what I'm doing. That is part of a good relationship. 100% supportive doesn't mean that she's going to say everything's a good idea. And so sometimes she'll say, that here's where I think that sounds bad. And that there have been a lot of times when I thought, I haven't had that thought, because entrepreneurs tend to be a little bit optimistic about their dream, right? whatever idea they had, they fall in love with it, which is how you push forward so well. And so for me, sometimes it's a good anchor point to go, hey, what do you think about this? And many times she'll say, I think that's a great idea. Or her bare minimum is this going to sink the ship? Is this something that could take us down? And if I go, no, she'll go, okay, have at it then. But, it's at least a sounding board. What she doesn't do is she doesn't give me direct advice about how to do business as much as a sounding board as being supportive.
But doesn't it also depend on where you are? Also, like, your kids are out of the house, right?
Well, until COVID.
yeah. But I guess the point is, like, I feel like my wife is so wrapped up in the kids. Like, when I tell her things about the business, she's like, oh yeah, that's nice, that's cool. Like, like, she doesn't really get involved in it. But like, I could definitely see her give me her opinion if she wasn't wrapped up with the kids. Well,
so this has been true throughout our relation. Well, for the first few years I was in grad school. And then after that, I was establishing a practice. And so not so much about that, but business is over 2 decades now. So she's had plenty of time with the kids at home to do that. And it basically is me saying, hey, I'd like to talk to you about this. Can we, go get dessert? Can we, I mean, in other words, let's find a place where it's outside of the kids.
I
Because
like that idea.
because and there is that place where you want to maintain that, because if all of her life is wrapped up in the kids and all your life is wrapped up in the business, there is a significant piece missing of the two of you being in connection with each other.
And there's definitely
is-
that.
And we're right back to that pause button, right? We're back to what do we do to make sure it doesn't happen.
So Lee, we've been going for what, almost an hour here, Kev?
A little 45 minutes or so, I think.
45 minutes. What is do you have, because I think that people, and I didn't read all your books. I didn't read.
You didn't?
I didn't read
What?
any.
Really?
I haven't read any of your books, quite frankly.
Not all of them, not any of them.
Yeah, not any of them. My question to you is like,
Flatter me, Jason.
well, if it makes you feel any better, I've read probably 5 books in my entire life, and they're all like in this closet over here, and they're all like marketing books, all 5 of them.
Okay.
But I listen to a lot of books. I listen to, but also I've started this new thing where now I listen and read at the same time, so that it's stored in 2 different places in my brain, and I retain it a little bit better.
That's good stuff. Yeah.
That's a whole nother story, which I'm sure you can talk about. But do you have like a list of, I don't want to say a list, but like, do you have like some bullet points that maybe some people that are like struggling with, like, are there any things that, like, I know, like for me, like these conversations are great, and like people I'm sure get a lot out of it, but like for me, like I like, okay, you know, do this. Like I like to be told sort of like
actionable items.
Like what are do you have like a list of things that maybe people like how they can balance their business and their marriage? And because I know that I told you this back a few days ago, or maybe a week ago, or whenever, I was like, you know, like I feel like what I'm doing is the most important thing for the business, and for the family, and she feels like what she's doing is the most important thing for the family. So how do we succeed in this? Like what are the kind of things that we can work on, or like, do you have like, look, from 9 to 5, be on the computer, 8 to 6, be on the computer, at 6 o'clock, don't look at it again? Do you have any, like, in all these years of writing these books, do you have any of those type things that we can maybe leave off with or end off with?
So first one would be a slight change in your perspective. You said the most important thing is, you know, for me, business. The most important thing for her is kids. I would change that to a very important thing I do is this. A very important thing she does is that. And you're both exactly right. I mean, when I said you divide and conquer, I don't mean that the other alternative is you both just, you know, you take care of the kids and she takes care of the kids, you do business, she does business. How you divide up the family structure, the change is to go, okay, what we're doing, both of us have a very important task. The most important task is for us as a team to be moving forward through life. So that's kind of the change in perspective. It's kind of interesting you asked this, because I've worked on a new program. It's called the Husband Bootcamp. And what I try to lay out is the fact that there are skills of relationship that I think a lot of men tend to go, you either have it or you don't. And it's kind of interesting we do that with the relationships, because we don't do that in most of the rest of life. I mean, if you said, you know, I want to be better at golf, you wouldn't say, well, either you're good at golf or not. You go, hey, maybe I'll go get some lessons from the golf pro, right? I'll get better at that. And that's the growth mindset, that there are some things that we can do, some skills. So when you ask those pieces, there are some skills like of building empathy, of dealing with conflict. And then there are some processes like having a vision statement. So one of the things that I think is important is for a couple to have a clear vision statement of where do they want to go. And that is a nice connecting activity to do as a couple. So you can kind of say, hey, I would like to do this. Would you be interested in doing that with me? Usually the spouse is happy to have a better vision statement of where you're going. So, you know, you start building that.
Yeah. Like you said, with the whole thing with like business and like having a vision statement or a vision board. I don't know if you're a religious guy or not, but my father I grew up as a born again Christian, although my mouth doesn't always reflect that. But it's interesting to me because we always hear, like, in the church, that divorce in a church is like, what if, like, nationwide it's 50% of divorce marriages get divorced. Supposedly there's like some small number of people in the church that get divorced. And what I'm like, kind of like, and I always like was like, okay, well, yeah, that kind of makes sense. But like, now that, like, we're talking about this, like, it makes sense because, like, you both have this godly thing that you're both working towards, that you're both care about, that you both put at the top of your marriage. So it makes you play on the same team, so to speak, which kind of talks to a lot of these things that we're talking about. Whereas, like, if you don't have a goal that you work on together, if you don't have a belief system that you work on together, everything falls apart. And it's kind of like making sense to me, like, why godly houses, doesn't matter what religion it is, any religion, why godly houses tend to last longer. And I think it's because of this vision board type thing.
Having a joint idea of where you're going. I have a buddy who talks about as being relationship velocity. You're both kind of going the same direction at a similar speed, is what he thinks is being a part of successful marriage. You have this velocity towards this goal. And so being clear about the goal certainly helps. For me, I mean, if you break it down, every marriage has to get to being a we, like, we are in this together. We are a team, which transcends it being you, me kind of thinking. And so, one of the things I've talked to when I've talked about with entrepreneurs about marriage is how marriage is like a company and nothing like a business. And so it's like a company because a we is this kind of place you hold in your mind, like a company. The company is fiction. I mean, it's on paper, right? The state says, oh, that's a separate entity. Now you've created this corporation, this company, just like they said when you signed your marriage license, you're now a different thing, and this entity of being a we. And so in many ways it's like that. If you treat your company like it's something, you give it a name, and you have the papers that show that, and you start talking about our company, the company, it becomes more and more real. The more you talk about us and we as the partnership, the more it becomes real. The problem is entrepreneurs then go, okay, well, then we'll treat it like a business. It's very transactional. Mm-hmm. And it's relational. And so where it breaks down is when entrepreneurs get used to there's a transaction piece to this that we lose. There's a relational piece. It's not you do this and I get to do this, right? That's a you, me, but we are trying to get through life together. How do we support each other to do that?
That's great.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, Jason, but I feel like we might be getting an invoice in our email after this hour of counseling that we just got.
What is this? So why don't you tell us a little bit about the Husband Bootcamp? You're creating this.
It's an online program. And it's what I try to do is create it so that you can take it in multiple ways. So it's a video course, but also the audio. So, busy entrepreneur or busy whatever can just listen to the audio while you're hopefully not working and hopefully not with your spouse, but maybe taking a walk or exercising, or you can watch the video and take in that information multiple ways, kind of like you were talking about listening to the book and reading it. And there's multiple ways of taking it in. There's a homework assignment. It's like a boot camp. If you go to a boot camp for fitness, one day for 30 days, each day you've got a separate lesson and a little bit of homework. So you got to dig a little bit and actually do something to get the benefit. But the end result is getting the skills and getting the knowledge and understanding that builds a strong relationship that can sustain, the kind of the struggles of life, and helps you take the pause button off and get back to being in relationship. So what I like about it A lot of men don't want to do therapy. I mean, just to be blunt, it's the husband boot camp. It's aimed for men. Men don't love therapy traditionally, but
Yeah, but if there's any women listening, they can enroll their husband.
they can enroll their husband. We'll have a process for doing that and
slide it into their
yeah,
inbox.
hey, look what I got for you. Merry Christmas.
Right.
So, but it's designed so that you get the skills without having to, feel like you're, on the spot in therapy or talking with a therapist or a coach or whatever, both of which can be very good things. But sometimes you just rather get that information and take it in and master it. And it's a way of doing it really by yourself. In fact, my guess is there'll be a lot of people who are doing this course and their spouse won't even know it. They'll just see the results of it.
Right. And they can they sign up somewhere, or what do they do? Because I know that it's not done yet, right? I mean, the course itself is done.
We're putting on the finishing pieces of all the pieces. So we got to get the structure so that we make sure everybody has a great experience. But we already have a place you can get more information by going to thehusbandbootcamp.com. Trying to be real creative with the URL, right? thehusbandbootcamp.com. And you can even get a little discount if you sign up before we launch. But that's a place to get some information.
Awesome.
Oh, that's awesome, Lee.
Yeah, I mean, Lee, we can probably go on for another hour or two. My phone, I don't know about you guys, my phone is blowing up. I have about 400 text messages, all kinds of, I mean, like when I'm
Be focused on this, Jason.
No, what I was going to say is like when I'm doing nothing, I can't get anybody to text me. I can't get anybody. Like, where is everybody? I'm bored. Like, what's going on? Like the minute I have something to do, it's like blowing up. So
they're waiting for you.
It never fails. Whenever I'm on this podcast, I can't tell you how all of a sudden everybody needs me. But when I'm sitting home bored, I got nothing to do. Like I'm like staring at my phone. It's like nobody's like, can't get anybody. Where the hell is everybody? So
that's the sign that you can turn and say, hey, to your wife, hey, you want to take a walk?
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
We have like, look, we need to have a second part of this because I have an 18-month-old and I have an 8-year-old. So taking walks don't happen very often. The only thing that happens is the baby goes to sleep at 6:30 or 7. I light up a cigar and I hang out on the deck and I have a cigar. But it's hard to do some of these things that you talk about, like just like take a walk when you have young kids.
You have to get more creative, but that will change. And what you're trying to do is lay the groundwork now for how you maintain that connection through the difficult years. I mean, raising kids when they're young, it's a challenge. It's time consuming, but what's worth it is that, so Kevin, when you get to that place where are they now, you're ready to get back to the relationship and you have somewhere you both want to go.
That's cool.
Cool.
Thank
So
you so
everybody,
much, Lee.
thehusbandbootcamp.com. Like you said, they can sign up. They get on a waiting list and you can give them a discount. That basically was.
And you get a discount if you get on that waiting list before we launch, and we're not far from launching. So time to lock that discount in.
Sounds good, Lee. Thank you so much for your time. We enjoyed it. I think since the day that we've met, Kevin and I have been asking you marriage questions because we felt like we are your like number one target. But yeah, I mean, there's so much. It's there's just so much to this. There's so much to like I say to my wife all the time. I'm like, you have no idea what goes on behind closed doors. She had no idea about all these problems I was having with the mortgage, because I'm a business owner. Like she had no idea like what I was going through at all. Like I just close my door and I just deal with it. Or like our business when a client or whatever, like she literally has no idea what happens when I close the door.
Maybe part 2 can be we just throw Michelle and Jessica on an interview with Lee.
There you go.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
There you go. But no, I mean, there's just so much because there's a lot. There's a lot between kids and the wife and the husband and the business. It's a lot.
Yeah. It's a lot. And yet that is the relationship that most people put right at the top of what they want to have and what they want to hold on to.
Awesome, Lee. Thank you so much. We're going to do this again for sure.
Yeah. Thanks, Lee.
Thanks for having me.
You got it.
Really great guy, Jason. Lee's awesome. Really smart guy. He's got like tons of books. He's written tons of books. He's got this online program. I'm going to check it out for sure. But it's really awesome. I had fun with that conversation.
I really like Lee. He's definitely, or Dr. Lee.
I wasn't sure if I should call him Dr. Lee or not.
I know. He's just like a nice guy. And
but it's another one of those conversations that could have went on forever. And maybe we'll have him on again.
Yep.
We talked to him after about part 2, having our wives on, see what happens. Oh no, did we say that on the podcast? I don't remember.
I don't know either.
Anyway, thank you guys so much for joining us and listening. As always, you can check us out at ecommerceuncensored.com, and we'll talk to you guys real soon.
Later.
Attention e-commerce founders, entrepreneurs, side hustlers, marketers, and growth hackers. If you're working round the clock to build your dream e-commerce business, you need an e-commerce marketing platform that works just as hard as you do. That means you need Klaviyo. With Klaviyo, you'll delight customers and drive revenue at the same time, with personalized emails and SMS marketing campaigns that you can design and send in minutes. For more, visit klaviyo.com/uncensored. That's KLAVIYO.com/uncensored.